Hello everyone, Para from Paradox Brothers YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a tiers list video. So let's go ahead and set some ground rules. We have S, A, B, C, and D. This is just a tiers list that I found on the tiermaker.com site, and I remixed it, removed some stuff I didn't really know anything about, and just moved some stuff around. So none of the tiers in themselves are actually ordered. And with that being said, let's just go ahead and start. So we have the Ritual Chaos decks. These decks are becoming more popular. They're really good at getting hand advantage. They don't set a lot, so they're not susceptible to Noble or Crossbow or Mind Control as easily. And they can take advantage of cards like Phoenix Wing Windblast and Regeki Break very easily while getting a bunch of Lights and Ducks in the grave and summoning Chaos Sorcerers everywhere and BLSs and attacking and being aggressive with their Ritual Recruiters and so forth. So very good deck, very fun deck. I recommend you try giving it a go if you like Chaos, but you don't want to play either the next two decks I'm going to talk about, which the first one is Chaos Warrior, which is a derivative of Anti-Meta Warrior, and the entire point of this deck was really to counter Chaos Turbo, which it's doing kind of a bad job right now at that, just because Gravekeeper Spy is so good. People are going to have to start upping up the Grandmaster Sasuke's, maybe even the Mystic Swordsman's, probably both, just to keep competing with the Chaos Turbo decks. Um, but a different alternative, which I'm going to skip around here, that they could do, and I think a lot of Warrior players may do, is start kind of playing the Earth Beatdown strategy instead, because it doesn't really care about Spy. It has kind of some protection from Chaos in the sense that, like, DD Assailant, you can put in Grandmaster Sasuke. So that's the cool thing about these types of decks, is that you don't care about playing Chaos, so you don't really have to pay attention to your attribute as often. They do play Gigantes, but you're going to have enough Earth in there because you play a ton of monsters that you can afford to play a Grandmaster Sasuke or two to make sure that you take care of, like, defense position Chaos monsters. And if they're in attack position, you just run straight into them with DD Assailant, and yeah, that's it. And also, if they summon if they summon a Chaos Sorcerer in defense, you just run over it with Goblins, which is great. So this deck, I think, is going to see a ton of more play. It's a really fundamentally based deck and very solid. Chaos Turbo, very common deck. Not going to talk too much about it. It's just really resilient against Delinquent Duo. Very good at using I guess to put it simply, it's very good at using the best cards of the format, like the Trinity, and recycling them and abusing them, and very good at playing around Delinquent Duo. Those two things alone make this deck really good. Not to mention it's all wrapped in using the Chaos engine, which is the best engine in the game. Reasoning Gate Turbo, deck is very difficult to use, very cool, very fun. A lot of people don't like it. Not totally sure why. I mean, I think they feel like it's not as interactive, but honestly, Chaos Turbo is probably less interactive, I would say. And there's nothing more degenerate feeling than someone playing a Moth face down, Delinquent Duoing, turn two, flipping it, doing it again. It feels way worse to me than playing against Reasoning Gate, because you can at least counter this deck very easily. But very difficult to play, very cool deck. Very good as well. So Goat Control, I don't know if Goat Control really is, all the way up here or not, but I'm going to kind of group Goat Control and Chaos Control kind of in the same. I feel like you play one, you can play the other. They're both pretty much are about the same. Probably Goat Control is a little bit better right now because it's not so dependent upon the light and the darks, and you can use some more variety, like Kinetic Soldiers against Warriors and stuff like that. Not that you struggle against Warriors. This deck does really well against it. But I do think it's still a really good deck. I just think it needs some more attention to be able to compete with some of these other ones. It does do really well against Earth Beatdown, which is really good, and Warrior. So moving on to the A tier, we had the Dimension Fusion Turbo. Actually, there's one thing. You know what? This list, I just realized it doesn't have return for a different dimension. But what we're going to do? We're just going to count this Bazoo Dimension Fusion thing as a return from a different dimension and Dimension Fusion Turbo. I think they're both similar. If you were to ask me, I think return decks like Chaos Return is definitely a bit better. I would probably even put Chaos Return at the very end of S tier because I think it's really good because it plays a lot of spies, plays a lot of Decorgis. Your opponent can knock it and then they lose all theirs, but you get advantage for it later on while they don't. Dimension Fusion Turbo is also very explosive. It's very good in a lot of similar ways, just a lot more aggressive than maybe Chaos Return is. Both of those are great decks. If you want to give Chaos a try, but you don't want to play Chaos Turbo, I would definitely recommend one of those two decks. Just be ready to have a lot more of a growing pain than you will with Chaos Turbo because it's not as intuitive in the sense of, like, you don't get in there and immediately know what you should do. There's a lot of different options you can play with those decks. Let's see, I don't really think this is definitely out of order here. So let's move these around. This goes way down here and move some stuff around. What else do I want up here? Okay. So I personally have always thought, still do think that Rescue Cat decks are very, very good. Could even be in the S tier potentially, but I'm going to put it in the A tier because it's extremely difficult to build these decks. It's probably even more difficult to build these than it is to play it. But it is difficult to play as well. And it is semi-counterable, but there are a lot of ways you can get around it that I don't think people are doing right now, like playing Solemn Judgments. It's not a terrible idea in a deck like this. If you can keep your opponent from like attacking you, for example. Maybe even scapegoats if you want to play like what's that? Big March of Animals or March of Big Animals or whatever it is. There's a lot of cool things you could do with this deck that a lot of people aren't doing right now. But I'm gonna put it right here. This is probably a little too high for Chaos Recruiter, but I'm gonna put that right there. So Chaos Recruiter decks are, if you're new to the format, you should play this because it teaches you how to play the game. You shouldn't play Chaos Turbo because it's going to just teach you things that only work in that deck that don't work in any other deck. The same could be said for a lot of these, but this will teach you fundamentals of the game, and then you can move on to another deck if you want. But Chaos Recruiter, I think, is a very solid. This deck right here, that's Sousa Soldier, I think this is actually like, it's kind of like a variant of Goat Control, but at this point, I'm going to consider it a bit weaker than the normal Goat Control, but I think using Spirit Monsters like Spirit Control is like a deck that we have on our channel. Honestly, it's one of my best performing decks when I'm playing just on my own. You'd be amazed at how good a Sousa Soldier that just returns to your hand can actually be, or Azura, or obviously Tsukiyomi at 3. You don't play a lot of tributes in the Spirit Control deck, but you do play a lot of Tsukiyomi, a lot of Spirit Monsters. It's actually pretty amazing how good this is. This and Creature Swap is also very good. Moving on to the B tier. This is probably too high for that. I'm going to move these around. I guess I said these weren't ordered, but yeah, so we'll just stick with that, not ordering these. This also got to go down here. We're just going to, there's not enough JAMA on here, but we're going to move this up here. This is just going to represent all the burn decks. I don't think all the burn decks are exactly the same, and some are better than others, but all of them are around the same area. Probably Panda Burn is the same, is like the best, but I think it's really good deck, very difficult to use, very easy to counter. One of the reasons why it's difficult to use, but if people aren't ready for it, you're probably going to win at least the first game. So on to the B tier here. We got the zombies. So zombies actually just came in second in a pretty decent sized tournament the other day with Delinquent playing it. It's not the first time he's done really well with zombies. I think the deck can be really good. Book of Life is a very good card. Removes monsters from play, brings a monster back, can be very aggressive, plays recruiters, has all sorts of good stuff going for it. Let's see, so King Dragon decks, using this one particularly, looks like it has Horus on here. I think like Horus Lockdown or Horus Control, this deck can be just like, I don't know. I think it is pretty good, but it can be totally ruined by like Tribe, Mirror Force, Lightning Vortex. Can really suck. But I honestly think, in my personal opinion, instead of building up the Horus, almost just like having the straight blue eyes in your hand and just being aggressive and having a light for BLS is better. The light and dark combination with the King Dragon and blue eyes is almost better than the Horus in some ways, but they're around the same. King Dragon's a really good card. You could play like blue eyes in it, make it, Alephia made like a blue eyes deck, which was actually really good. Of course, he used Paladin, but yeah, I'd say B tier for both of these. Emissary decks, I gotta say, I don't know. I'll leave it in the B tier because I don't think it's like horrible, but I don't think it's like super good. It can be really aggressive, can be really good. I've gotten destroyed by these decks before personally, but so Gearfried's something that I feel like is like underexplored, has some really good cards, but needs a lot more attention. Blast with Train's really good. Smoke Grenade can be really good. Gearfried himself isn't that bad. You know, he's immune to Snatch still, decent stats, can't be Tsukiyomi'd. A lot of good things going for him. Not as good as like a lot of the warrior decks in general, but Blast with Chain, probably something you could play just in your normal warrior decks if you wanted to, or make like an Earth aggro Gearfried deck, which would be cool. I mean, we've made something like that on the channel. I think that's potentially a good way to go with this. So Strike Ninja in general has this is I think supposed to be representing like the Ninja Monarch strategy, which is a deck I've secretly been working on, trying to make work. Very difficult to make work. The ratios in that deck are very tricky, but I do think Strike Ninja in general is way better than what most people think. Um, Kind of goes with the return strategy. You can just banish Gravekeeper Spies, banish Tokorchis, bring them all back and attack for game. I think that deck is very underrated, and Strike Ninja is really cool. So this is hand control. Hand control, when it works really well. When it doesn't work, you just fall behind. You lose your whole strategy with hand control, and you just lose for it. But I do think it's still a decent deck. This is a. I honestly probably gonna put this down here. I think I'll come back to that in a second. So Beast Down decks would be really good if Gravekeeper Spy wasn't a thing and Spirit Reaver wasn't a thing. Um, and Earth Beatdown is almost just better. And I love Beast Down decks. I love Berserk Gorilla, but I just don't think it's as good as like you know goblins and other Earth monsters. I do think it is really good, and it can be really good, and it can be good in an Earth Beatdown deck. But um, this almost goes with like Goat Control, but this is maybe like a weaker version. Like people using this in Goat Control maybe is a weaker option right now. Maybe it's not because a lot of people are playing Rikiki Break right now. But as soon as they start swinging over to the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast again, this card immediately becomes way worse. Benkei strategies. I think this is actually very underexplored. Benkei just when it works, it's just you just win the game, kind of like any OTK. But you can search this one, which is a big deal. I don't think people will give it credit enough that you can actually search this winning strategy right here. This represents like Earth Stun. I think Earth Stun can be really cool. Can be really good. A lot of really good kind of stun base cards in the Earth element and Yu-Gi-Oh! Go format pool, and I think it's underexplored. You could definitely maybe look into potentially using it. The problem with this is I feel like if you use an Earth Stun, you've got to use like a Mega Rock Dragon or some big boss monster that makes a lot of sense to use. You could just chip away at them, I guess, from time like over a long period of time, kind of like the Pac-Man decks do. But I just feel like it needs a little bit more oomph. So maybe some more development on this one. But Dark Magician decks, we made a Dark Magician deck recently on our channel. I thought it was really fun. Actually, it was way better than I expected. It does seem like Skill Dark Magician gets totally destroyed anytime you get to use this effect, or before you get to use this effect. But I think this deck, using a Dark Magician in there, you can totally make it happen if you want to. Blue Eyes probably a bit better just because it's way stronger. Makes a difference. Elemental heroes, so just kind of like I guess you'd say maybe a weaker warrior, but kind of really cool. You can do a fusion gate kind of strategy, have Thunder Dragons in there, do something really cool with that. Definitely not a terrible deck, but yeah, very fun, very cool deck. Legendary ocean decks or water-based decks, they're good. They're just not like um, they're not as popular, so I really don't have as much information. A lot of these decks down here, except for this one. Let's move this up here. That's Flip Control. Flip Control is just a weaker Chaos Turbo type of deck, right? Well, kind of different. It plays very differently. I guess it's really passive. It doesn't use as many Chaos. It uses a lot more flips. But I'd say B tier for that one for now. But yes, a lot of these decks I just don't have as much information on. Legendary Ocean, Empty Jar. I'd say Empty Jar. I'm going to put it down here. I think Empty Jar is really hard to win with. Pac-Man. These individual cards that make up Pac-Man are really good, and you should start citing them in your other decks because they can take care of floodgates, they can take care of walls, really annoying cards. Royal Magic Library, very easy to counter. I'll put it down here as well. This machine, I don't actually know much about Mazera, but Cyberstein decks or Machine OTK, it's like a weaker Reasoning Gate Turbo, like a much weaker because King Tiger just destroys this deck. So I'm going to put it right here. This I'm going to put up here. I think this is just like any Blue Eyes deck. Well, I guess if we're talking Blue Eyes Paladin, honestly, I feel like it goes kind of up in this category. It's not like a A tier by any means, but I think it's a solid B tier. You could definitely play Blue Eyes in this format if you want to. Machine Chaos, I'm going to move Machine Chaos up to B. Limiter Removal is just way too strong of a card. It just doesn't have as much exploration, but I don't think they have enough removal to really open up the board to get rid of face down monsters. That's kind of annoying. But if you get like an open board and you go in with this or like a return or dimension fusion or whatever, this type of strategy can be a winning strategy for sure. Exodia decks, almost purely a gimmick deck, but definitely I think, yeah, go down here with the rest of these. This is even better than that, I'd say. Let's see. Okay. I moved the Dragons deck, the Armor Dragon. I think my wife particularly played this for a little while. I think it's actually a lot better. And I think Dox's wife also had a deck like this. And way better than what you would expect. XYZ Dragon Head, or XYZ Dragon Tank. Is that what it is? The fusion monster, the contact kind of fusion monster. This deck I think is very cool. I have one myself. I'll probably show it on the channel sometime soon, but really fun to play. Um, I don't know, could be way better than this potentially. Silent Swordsman, kind of like a walking floodgate, loses to Tsukiyomi. If it didn't lose to Tsukiyomi, it would be way higher on this tiers list. Moving down here, so I already went to the heroes, just a weaker warrior. Went through those. Fiends can be quite good. I think in like a Chaos Return build, it could be way better than C. I haven't really used. I'm actually going to move this out of here because I don't feel okay raking that because I haven't really used a lot of fire strategies. I've been wanting to use the Infernal Emperor. I think that's what he's called. Can't remember the fire guy. Um, when I use him more often, I'll get back to this video. But last tiers list here, or tiers here on the tiers list, Exodia. I think it's kind of a gimmick. I think all these are pretty. This one I will. I'm going to just pretend this is Fusion Gate and Polymerization because I think Fusion Gate is way better than Polymerization because you can bring back the monsters you banish. Dox has made a lot of Fusion Gate type of decks, or a few, and they've all been really powerful when they work. Last turn's a gimmick, MTGR is a gimmick, Library is a gimmick, and this is just very bricky, and it's just when it's very cool when you get it because it's kind of like a Raigeki, and it's really awesome. I love to make a deck that's competitive using Archlord Zerato because it's one of my favorite cards in Go format. I have an Archlord Zerato. I have a couple of them as you've seen us play on the channel before if you've watched those videos, like the live played ones. I'm going to come back to this strategy at some point, but for now I have to put it in C because it just hasn't yielded the results that I wanted it to. So, well, that's the tiers list. I know I kind of went through it pretty fast, but it's almost 20 minutes. There are a lot of decks here, so there's a lot of decks in the format you can use. And like I said, the difference between S and A and B and C, and they're very far and few between. Really, the only decks on here that are like you're probably not going to win a tournament anytime soon if anybody's remotely ready for you, or probably the D tier, just because they're so easy to counter in this format. I mean, a lot of people hate these decks, hate playing against them, but you go against the right player and they're gonna out these decks pretty fast. But outside of that, a lot of these other decks you can certainly do well with, and maybe even win a tournament with potentially. Particularly the S, the B, the A, and the B. These could potentially win. Um, yeah, I'd say at least they have a strong potential. I'd probably just last adjustments. I might move the dragons down here and the rockstone down here and Benkei maybe down here. Silent Swordsman, maybe the emissaries. It might look something more like this. Yeah, I'd say that's about right. I'm almost tempted to move the Strike Ninja Monarch further down too, just because I personally play this a lot and I get frustrated with it, but I know it's better than what I'm giving it credit for. It's just I get frustrated with it. But yeah, so this is our tiers list, or at least my tiers list, not Dox's. Maybe he'll make his own, hopefully. And you can see our opinions might be pretty different. But let us know what you think down below. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.